Okay, so today we're going to be pulling the motor out of this here bike. This is a 1985 Suzuki GS 450 and the motor is seized. We're going to pull it all out of there. I'm going to see if the transmission's seized or not. If it is, then I'll sell it on eBay. The heads are going on eBay and the rest of it's probably going for scrap. So you might find yourself in a similar situation parting out a bike like this, or you might need to rebuild, you know, your cylinders, your head or whatnot, or you want to just pull it out, see if you can pull it out. Well, whatever your rationale is for wanting to pull the motor out of your motorcycle, after this video you're going to know how. Here's some pretty common tools which you'll want to have on hand. Probably the most uncommon of which is just a long bolt like this. You can use a motorcycle axle or something like that, just a long 12-inch or 18-inch bolt. You know, we got ourselves a big pry bar, a socket set. Nothing too hard to lay hands on. Next thing we're going to do is remove the seat, remove the tank, and remove the carbs and airbox and all that junk. Next we're going to go ahead and remove the exhaust. You can tell that this bike was maintained by a master mechanic because it's missing so many little parts. But typically exhaust is just held into the head with bolts like this here. I'm going to spray them down with PB Blaster, maybe give them a couple good whacks with the hammer and try and loose them on out there. A lot of times your motorcycle exhaust is also going to be attached in one or two other positions underneath the bike, somewhere around here. So I'm going to take all those bolts out and remove this exhaust system. Each bolt I take out I save and it goes into the bolt bucket. I can't tell you guys how useful this practice is. Some good things to hold on to are foot pegs. These are worth about 15 bucks on eBay. Alright, so that thing wiggled on out of there. That's when your pry bar comes in handy. If you've got a great big piece of worthlessness like this thing is, then just pry it on out. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the brake pedal and the shifter. If you've got a brake pedal like this that's held together with one of those bolts that goes in here and it clamps this shut, sometimes they get hard to remove. So what you can do is you can take a screwdriver and just sort of bang it in there, and that's going to open up this clamp a little bit, and then it should just slide right out. These are each good for saving too. So many different manufacturers use these kinds of parts interchangeably, so if you bend one up on one of your other bikes, or if you got a buddy who wants one or whatever, they can definitely use this on a lot of different bikes. Now I'm going to go after these front foot pedals, and we should be nearing close to where we'll be done our prep. Situations like this is when this great big bolt is useful, because I'm going to use it to drive out this swing arm bolt. Remove these brackets. Alright, so now these front foot pegs are off, and now I'm just going to go around the bike and disconnect all the cables and wires. Remove the starter motor here, obviously, and I guess I can just leave this hanging in the bike. But I got this clutch cable here, got a tack cable here. Just sort of go around, give it a good look-see, and just remove everything that would connect it to the bike. So now we're going to go ahead and roll this bike into the grass, and that is to avoid situations like this. Big spots on the driveway there, it's going to enrage the landlord. And this is good because, you know, if any gas or oil or any kind of unsavory chemicals drips into the grass, well, that's okay, you know, because Mother Nature is going to do a fine job transforming that nasty oil into nice fresh daisies. So we can just go ahead and, you know, spill whatever oil we want to, and it doesn't really matter. Guys, I'm just kidding. Obviously I drained the crankcase before doing this. Be careful with your fluids. Alright, now except for the motor mounts, the last thing connecting this motor to the bike is this here chain. So rather than struggle with that enormous bolt there, which I which I don't think I have a socket for, I am going to remove the rear wheel, loosen some slack on the chain, and then just slide it right off the socket. So to do that, that's actually really easy. All you gotta do is unhook this drum brake linkage and all that, take off the axle nut, bang the axle through, and the wheel should just clunk right down. So I use my long bolt again to drive that rear axle out. As soon as that thing clunked down, I went ahead and pushed this wheel up a little bit, and you can see all this slack in the chain here. So now I'm just going to wiggle that out, remove the rear wheel, provide some slack for the front sprocket. Alright, now that's off and it's been moved out of the way. Now I can start going around looking for these motor mount bolts. You're typically going to have maybe 3 that you need to take out. Sometimes, like in this instance, you're going to want to take out the entire bracket rather than just the bolt that attaches it, because the bracket is going to get in the way of you trying to pull this motor. So what I do is I take out the bolt and then I take out the bracket. Seems like I got one there. Usually there's a big one in back. Let's see here. Here's this big one. I might end up taking these brackets out too. We'll see if they get in the way. And then typically there's one underneath on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all that. Alright, so now I got all the mounting bolts out, and I believe that motor ought to be just sitting there free. Some bikes, like I know the Suzuki Katana has sort of a subframe where this part of the frame and this part of the frame actually bolt off and the motor will just fall right down. But most bikes have a complete frame like that. So we're going to have to get another way. We're going to have to find another way to get this thing out. This is the reason why I pulled this bike into the grass. We're going to use the grass to our advantage, and we're going to put this thing in a really carefully orchestrated place where we can really easily pull this motor. So this next part is probably the most delicate part of this entire process. You guys just watch what I do real carefully, and you know, y'all be sure to do the same. Well, now look at me. I was so busy carefully orchestrating that last maneuver that I forgot about this one last mountain bolt. So I got to take that one out. Alright, now that's a lot better. And as you can see, that motor is more or less loose in that frame. So now all I got to do is wiggle it, pry it, push it around, pick the frame up, throw it down. Just, you know, get that thing on out of there. And so that's the way it's done. Now remember, if you're going to be storing this motor anywhere, you're going to want to bring it off the ground a little bit. I keep my motors on these pallets here. Helps to absorb the little drippy drips and also keeps them nice and dry. When it rains, I throw a tarp over them, and that's really the best that I can do. As you guys can see, I don't have a garage. But what you're going to want to also do is plug up the intake and the exhaust with plastic. I just rip plastic bags in half and jam them in there. And also don't forget about any missing spark plugs. You're going to want to cover those up. Any chain tensioners, as you can see down here. Basically you want to protect these motors from the elements and also from animals that want to come and nest in them. Otherwise they'll go real bad real fast. So having it all exposed like this, I unfortunately sold the side cover, so I can't really cover that up too well, but having that all exposed is not very great either. But fortunately this motor isn't for rebuild, it's just to part out and recycle and get it out into the ether of the motorcycling world somewhere. So that's what I got there. So you guys can see, I mean, I just did this by myself in maybe half an hour. This motor is not very heavy. I mean, this is just a 450, but I can pick up Goldwing 1100 motors by myself. I mean, it hurts, but I can pick them up, you know. And this is maybe 50, 60 pounds, something like that. So y'all can do it just one person. It's not too hard. Alright, and be sure to clean up your grass so you don't mangle your lawnmower next time you mow. You're good to go.